Hello everyone, it's Natasha from Treasure Books. In this step-by-step video tutorial, we are creating these open spine journal covers. In fact, we are creating full journals from start to finish. I've got all the steps written down so that by the end of this tutorial, this is pretty much what you will be able to create with your own two hands. Sounds good? Well, let's jump right in then. First thing we're going to do, of course, is create the cover. So you need 3 pieces. As you can see here, you need your front cover, your spine, and your back cover. So I have prepared the pieces already, and I'm using cardstock. I'll come back to this in a moment. If you prefer, you can, if you want to, use just one piece like this. It doesn't have to be 3 separate pieces that then you have to put together. This is a cereal box. It's not sturdy enough, but it can be done. You can also use perhaps a book cover like this. This one's pre-painted, but has a tiny little spine, so we can't do much about that. But what I'm trying to say is you don't have to have 3 pieces. And as you'll see as we go along, you can go about this project in many different ways. And this is just one option that I'll be showing you today. All right, so now that we have our covers, front and back, and the spine, the next thing we're going to do is cut out the side shape on spine. Before I do that, I just wanted to tell you that I'm using very sturdy, quite thick material here. And especially on the spine, this is actually not as sturdy, but it's still, it's quite thick. I like to keep all of this kind of stuff in my stash from notepads and things like that. And you can also use cereal boxes but stacked together, so you can have 2 or 3 cereal boxes, glued together for the sturdiness. The spine part is especially important that it's sturdy because it's holding all of the, the signatures and everything. You don't want anything flimsy. Okay, next thing, as I said, you're going to cut out your desired shape. And as I've already mentioned, you can do so many different things and you can go to town with this kind of thing. It is difficult, well, it can be, cutting through a thick material like this. So when you have intricate designs, let's say these little diamond shapes, or if you have a heart, it might be difficult. So the easiest thing to go for is this kind of thing. Here are some ideas in real life or actual journals completed. So here you can see just one window, here I've got 2, and here I've got this diamond kind of a shape. So totally up to you what you want to do. But today I want to go for this shape here. All right, so here is what I'm going to do. I drew myself a triangle there. I'm going to cut this out next. I just wanted to point out what I've got written here. Make sure to leave space between the window. So let's call this a window that's going to be cut out. And the edge of the spine. Okay, so you need to leave space in here. I wrote 1 centimeter or 1/4 of an inch. They're actually not the same measurement, but you don't have to have any perfect measurement here. We just want to have enough space. So I would say this much space, let's say 1/8 of an inch, that would be not enough. Definitely not enough. Okay, so maybe, I don't know, pinky finger, let's say. Okay, I'm also leaving a bit more space up here because I actually have to bind the pages somewhere. So I'm not only going to have this much space up the top because I won't have anywhere to bind. Okay, this gives me enough space. And just in case you want to know, it's 3 centimeters, and in inches, I don't know, I don't like giving these measurements out because they're not important. It's just over 1 inch. We don't want to take all the fun out of project by having perfection and perfect measurements. Okay, let's move on. But before we move on, we have to cut this shape out. So this can be a little bit tricky. You just really need a very sharp X-Acto knife or a cutting blade, and of course your metal ruler. And this is where cutting out circular shapes can be a little bit probably difficult to do if you're doing it by hand. But if you have like a machine that can do it, then perfect. All right, I'm gonna cut out this rectangle. Now, I'm really taking my time with this process, and I'm going to keep going over and over and over again. If you can have a look at the back, I didn't even come close to cutting all the way through. This is where I require perfection of myself. So when it comes to measuring and all of that, as I was saying before, I rarely ever measure anything. But when it comes to things like this, I will demand perfection of myself because I want the work to be worthwhile. So I can feel that I've cut through that one, and I haven't gone all the way to the corners yet. So corners I'm going to do last. First, I'm going to just make sure I'm kind of getting through to the other side. When the groove is deep enough, you can even do it without the ruler because that blade is going to fall right through. Okay, so you can see that I'm through all the way to the other side, and now I'm going to go into those corners. And here we go, that's what that's looking at, all cut out, very simple, straightforward. And depending on the kind of materials that you use, you might have a really nice finished edge, like this one here. Or you can have, you know, this kind of cheap material, so there's imperfections, in which case I like to use my nail file, which I don't use for my nails, I only use it for this kind of thing. And just slightly, you know, make that quite nice. Because the thing is, this opening here is the star of the show, right? So I want to make it really nice, and that's why I like to do the next step, which is painting all the edges of the spine. This is optional, especially if you're going to be wrapping with fabric. We'll be talking about that next. I'll show you why I like to paint the edges. See, in this journal here, we're just focused on the edges here. You can see the edges. You see that in there? I don't know how well you can see actually in video, but this, if I didn't paint it, it would be this color, which, I mean, it's not a deal breaker, it's still quite all right. But now this one here, I wrapped the edges. I actually used contact paper, like this is book covering, glittery gold paper, and I wrapped the edges. We'll talk about that, but there was no need for me to be painting anything because all of the edges, look at that, beautiful. All the edges are wrapped. All right, I'm going to stick with what I planned to do, but I'm going to show you also if you're opting for wrapping the edges rather than gluing papers. I'll show you how to do it. Okay, here's an example of wrapped edges, and this came from an album, a photo album. I'm just going to talk you through because otherwise it will take too long. You take your piece, pretend it's not covered yet, pretend it's just like this. And you cover it with whatever material you like. Let's say I want to wrap it into this beautiful white paper. And then you glue it down. Next, you tape at the edges, and then you glue it down. So you glue the edges down. Yes? And then on the inside, you cut across from edge to edge, from here to here, and from here to here. You cut the excess off, and then you glue it down. And then remember, this white is also glued down. Probably should have just demonstrated, but it will take way too long. But that's how you do it. You can actually see it from this piece. And then you do this. And then you have this. And then you have this. That's exactly how I did it on this one. But I had to do it twice, of course, because I had 2 windows. Perfect. And of course, I practiced first before I started doing it on my book because I wanted to make sure that it's going to look good and that it's going to work. And this is what I used, this book covering. You can get these at the start of school terms and stuff like that. They'll have all sorts of different ones. And it looks quite dull at the moment, but at night it sprinkles like crazy. But since I decided not to wrap, that means my edges are going to be visible. So I'm just quickly going to add some color to make sure that it all looks nice and professional. And here we go. So all of the edges are painted, but I also wanted to kind of go up onto the sides just in case. All right, I'm going to set this aside to dry. Step number 4 that we're going to do is covering the front and back panels, and we're only doing the outside. And you can use fabric, paper, paint, whatever you want to do. And I am going to use scrapbook paper. And now you're going to see some of that wrapping process in action. I need to give myself a margin all around, so I'm going to trim the paper down. So you can do what I'm about to do with fabric, or you can paint your panels directly, like that's what I did over here. You can see I actually painted the cardstock directly. But for this video, we are wrapping. So first thing I'm going to do is apply glue on the inside, well, on one side of the panel. All right, glue applied, and I'm going to glue it down. This is going to be my front, and now repeat on my second piece. And here comes the wrapping. So first thing I want to do is just fold the edges. Next, just like I mentioned before, we're going to taper these edges over here, and we're leaving a little bit of space there because we want to wrap everything perfectly. And of course, we're going to be wrapping like this. So for the next step, you can just apply glue on the inside and wrap it down, or you can use double-sided tape, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with 2 opposing sides, so pop that one down, and then its opposing side, and pop that one down. And now before I do these sides, I'm going to go into this corner and press that in, and do the same for all 4 corners. And then when you fold it down, you get that perfect edge, or if it's sticking out a little bit. I really like to be pedantic with this kind of thing. So I kind of go in and just fold a little bit. So now when I fold it down, it's going to give me a perfectly finished edge, completely wrapped. I don't want any of this cardstock kind of peeking out. Okay. Now I'm ready to finish with the wrapping business. Make it all nice. All right, that's one panel done. It looks absolutely perfect. And in my finished book, I'll show you here, this is the exact same steps that I follow. You can see those edges. The edges are absolutely, you know, neat and perfect. That's what we're going for. And I'm just going to repeat my second panel. And here we have it. Both of my panels are done. These are going to be my front and back covers. So we're only covering the outside for now. I'm going to pop that aside. And the next step is to cover the spine, also outside only. And we need to cut out the shape. So this off-cut piece is going to be my spine. I like the scrapbook paper. I think it's going to look really nice with these covers. You can, of course, use the same paper that you used on the covers, or fabric, or whatever you're using. Okay, so here's my thing. I'm not going to do any wrapping, so I'm gonna glue that on right to the edge like this, and then cut the excess off. But before I do any gluing, I first want to cut out the inside shape. This has to be completely gone. So I'm going to draw exactly where I need to cut. And I just wrote myself a note that that's inside, so that I know that this piece is being glued on this side, because sometimes the shapes don't correspond. Okay, now I need to cut this out, and I really want to be quite precise with this, and if I get it wrong, then I'll just do it again with another piece of paper. And here we go, moment of truth. My shape is cut out, so I'm just gonna double check Yep, that's looking quite good. I'm just making sure that, you know, that it's cut properly. And before I do anything else, I'm just going to ink the inside edges. This gives it a nice finished look. And now, of course, I'm going to glue this to this. So I'm going to apply glue onto this piece. You can apply it here, doesn't matter, as long as you really get into the edges. I'll show you the edges here. You don't want any lifting of that paper. You really want it glued down. Okay, I've got glue all over that piece, and there might be some seeping, which is fine because we can always clean it up, and also it moves the glue all the way to the edge as well, so it helps. And now, precision time. I'll pop this down. Maneuver it into place. That's looking good. Check the front here. Excellent. Perfect. Now make sure that it's glued down. You might want to give it a couple of moments for the glue to dry before you trim off the excess. I'm just gonna go right in because I'm filming. Actually, I think I want to keep this. Okay, now you can of course go in with your scissors, but I'm just gonna do this. That's looking good. Now up here, there's a little bit too much up here, so I'm gonna cut all of that, or cut it all down, all the way to that spine. Oops, cut into the spine accidentally. Doesn't matter. Easily fixable. There we go. And here is the spine ready. Now you can see the white edge of that paper glued on, but that's okay because I'm going to ink the edges anyway, and it's going to remove some of that white. You can see there. You can see how it takes away the white. Our next step, step number 6, is to pretty much do this exact same thing, but we're not gluing it down. So we have to prepare the inside spine piece. We're going to be covering this. And it has to be the same width as outside. And also you need to cut out the shape. And then we're going to put it aside. So we're not gluing it on yet. We're doing this exact same thing, but not gluing it down. Double checking, that looks pretty good. Now I just have to cut all of this excess off. And here is my inside spine piece. Before I move on, I'm just going to double check that, I'm mainly looking at the window here, that it's all nice and, you know, perfect. And I'm gonna ink the edges. This is totally optional, of course. That's ready to go, and I'm going to put it aside for now. Step number 7 is to join front and back covers to the spine using fabric, which is preferable, or cardstock. We'll come back to this little diagram. I'm going to use these pieces that I have in my stash. The reason why fabric is preferable is because that's the opening of your book. If you use, there's nothing else there, it's just fabric. If you use cardstock, over time, you might get cracks. It might rip, which you don't want that to happen. That's why I wrote that fabric is preferable. The thing with fabric, however, is this. It doesn't give structure. It doesn't keep the book in place, which isn't a big deal because actually when you're using the book, even though this book has 6 signatures, it lays flat when I use it, okay? However, what I did on this one here is a combination of fabric, which you can see from the outside here, and cardstock, which is on the inside here. Totally up to you how you want to make your book. There's many different ways that you can make this project. So these are just some of your options that I'm giving you. For this video, I'm only going to use fabric, but in case you're wondering, this book you can see has a lot more structure. It's not as flimsy. And the way that I did this is simply by gluing cardstock onto the fabric. So the fabric is visible on the outside and the cardstock is on the inside. And this book also lays completely flat. Wherever I turn it, completely flat. See that? How lovely is that? Love it. But as I said, today I'm only going to use fabric. You want something thin, but with a little bit of structure. You don't want thick upholstery fabric, and you don't want really thin I don't know, lace or something, of course this isn't going to work. So I've got 2 pieces of fabric. They're much larger than my spine. We're going to be trimming that down later. And the fabric is glued onto the inside of the spine. So I'm going to turn it around. And this is why you need sufficient space here. If you had a tiny little bit of space, you make your life a whole lot harder, right? Because we will be gluing this fabric all the way to the edge of the window, just like that. So that's the first thing we have to do. We have to glue the fabric onto the inside of the spine, and you don't want it to be visible from the window, from the outside. See this? The windows, you can't see fabric anywhere. First, I'm gonna protect my desk. Next thing I wanna do is grab the strongest glue I have. This really isn't the strongest glue, but it's fabric glue, and I'm gluing fabric, so that's why I'm going for fabric glue. You can't use glue stick, you know, and nothing flimsy like that. Don't even bother with double-sided tape. You need glue. And I'm just going to flip this the right way just because. And now we need to apply the glue all the way to the edge. Of course, there, like on this whole section here, apply the glue. So here we go. The glue is applied. Going in with my fabric, I'm going to glue it all the way to that edge. And I might even douse it in more glue from the outside, because why not? You know, this is all going to be covered anyway. So here we go. Let it we need this glued down. We don't want to mess around. Press it down. I'm not messing around here. This is important. It needs to be glued. You want to also check it from this side. You want to make sure you can't see that fabric. Tilt it a little bit. You don't want to see any fabric if you're, you know, being a perfectionist. And repeat on the other side. Another option, of course, is if you don't want to mess around with this kind of perfection and, you know, you can fray your fabric and then have the frayed fabric visible from the outside. That's also an endearing look. Perfect. Next step is, of course, to glue the panels down. But we don't want to be gluing the panels here because remember, this is our front cover. So the panels have to go onto the outside. So step number 7, we glued the fabric onto the inside spine. Now we're going to flip the book and glue the covers onto the fabric. So this diagram here, that's supposed to be showing you the fabric. So anyway, let's one step at a time. Let's flip this around. That's my top. I'm just gonna make sure, you know, that's the top. And now we're gluing the panels onto the sides here. So in my diagram, I wrote, make sure to leave space between covers and spine. So when you're gluing your things down, you don't want to do this. You don't want to glue them right up to the spine because the book has to open and close. So you want to leave space just like that. Maybe about, what would that be, 1/4 of an inch? I don't measure, I don't know. But you can see the space there between the spine and the cover. You can probably see it a whole lot better here. See that? I used this exact same fabric. Space. Quite a bit of space, actually. I have a tool, a space tool. You don't need this tool, by the way. I have it, so I do this, okay? It gives me space. I only recently bought this little gadget. But before I had the little gadget, I just used thick cardstock like this to make sure that, you know, that gives me space. Let's see. Perfect. Okay. All right, one at a time. Whatever I glue on this side is going to be my front cover. I choose this to be my front cover. I'll pop this to the side. Protect my desk. I'm going to use my gadget. It doesn't even go all the way down. That's fine. And I'm going to cover this whole piece in glue. All of it. Using my cheap fabric glue, and off I go. I'm going all the way to my little gadget. And I'm not being stingy with that glue either. Now, take my front cover and I'm gonna glue it right in there, pop it down. Of course, we don't need the gadget anymore. At this point, you might notice glue seeping. The glue is going to discolor your fabric. So you can either be very, very careful, or you can do what I'm going to do right after I repeat the same process I did on this side. Press everything down, and then I'm going to flip it around, because what's happened now is all that glue has seeped through the fabric onto my paper, so it's kind of gluing the paper down. So I need to remove the paper. There's a chunky bit of fabric here. I'm going to chop that off. Maybe I'll do it there too, so it's kind of even. All right, and now what I do to combat the glue, because you can see how it stains the fabric. You'll be able to see those stained bits through on the other side. It's no big deal, but this is what I do. I just cover the whole thing in glue, and I find I'm actually gonna go and like douse the whole thing. Why not? Can't hurt, right? I find that the glue gives extra structure to that opening and closing area of the book, because when the glue dries, as you know, it kind of hardens everything, so the book is not going to be as flimsy. I might even go off edge here. This is what I'm doing. You can't see, this is all covered in glue that was seeping through. You can see that there. It's just everything looks nice and even. Doesn't look like I have splotches of stained areas. That's what I'm doing now, and I'm going off the edge as well, because some of this fabric is visible off the edge too. So okay, this is ready now. At this point, what I have to do, actually, unfortunately, I have to let this dry, which kind of sucks because I just want to get on with finishing the tutorial, but we cannot rush these things, you see. So we're just gonna have to let it dry. And basically you let it dry just as it is, just like this. I'm going to take it outside. I'm going to press these down to really make sure that everything is glued, and let it dry in this position, and I'll be right back.
Dry quickly, my precious.
Okay, my precious is not fully dried yet, but it's dry to touch, so we can move on to the next step, which is to cover inside of the front and back covers with scrapbook paper. So we're hiding all of this ugliness here. So you need 2 panels that's going to cover this. And if you turn it to the light, you can kind of see where your front panel, you know, where they end. And you want your scrapbook paper to go from over here all the way to here, not all the way to the spine. So we're leaving a margin, tiny little margin here and a little margin here. I'll do it off camera and I'll show you what I mean. And here we go. I've cut down my panels. I've also inked the edges, and now when I position them in the correct positions, you can see I've left a tiny little margin all around, and when I turn it to the light, you can see the where the edge of the cover ends. Right there, I left a tiny little margin there as well. And now I'm simply going to glue them down. I'm going to apply the glue all the way, like all around, but also all the way to the edges. If you're adding a closure, if you want to like a ribbon closure or something, you would add your closure at this step and then glue your piece down. I'm not going in with closure, so I'm just going to go into the gluing down. Make sure to pick up any glue if it's seeping, and make sure it's all nice and glued down. And of course, we're going to repeat with this panel. Okay, lovely. All glued down, all looking good. And now for step number 9, glue inner spine piece that we prepared in step 6, the one that we put aside, this one here. Probably would have been a good idea to write myself a note, but I'm pretty sure this is the top, and it has to go on here. And again, really make sure to get glue all the way to the edges. I can't stress that enough, because we're not sewing anything. Usually I do a whole bunch of sewing in my projects, not this one. All right, that's pretty much doused in glue, and now I'm gonna align it with the top, and of course align it with the opening. Before pressing it down, I'm gonna check over here. It's looking quite good. I'm pretty sure I have it the right way up. Really should have written myself that note, but I didn't. Really press it down. It's looking pretty good. I usually strive for perfection. You can see the inside here. And then when things are not perfect, I tell myself we're not striving for perfection here, because like this could have been a bit shorter there. But if I use my bone folder to really kind of glue that edge, it makes a big difference from the outside. So, you know, I'm pretty happy with this, and I'm just going to leave it. Okay, now I like to put this under something heavy while I'm preparing the signatures. So I'm going to put my big chunky book right on top of this. And now the next step is to prepare your signatures. So totally up to you how many signatures you want to have in your book. But it does have something to do with the kind of opening, the window that you've chosen. So just to show you, this one here has 5 signatures. This one here has 6 signatures. And this one here has 5 signatures. So I'm just going to have a look at my book and see how many signatures I can fit in here. I reckon I can have 3 signatures here that are visible, and I can fit an extra signature in here and here. They're not going to be visible through the window. You'll only be able to see 3 signatures, but that gives me a total of 5 signatures. So that's what I'm going to do. That's my decision. When choosing your papers for your signatures, keep in mind that they are visible through the window. That's part of the charm of this type of binding, this type of journal. So you can see here I've gone with some colors here as well. And here I did yellows and I did coloring book pages actually. So I'll just quickly show you what I've got inside. I'll just kind of flip through. I have all sorts of types of paper in here. I have coffee dyed, I have Easter egg dyed, which is what we did in the last video. This is also Easter egg dyed. I have, like I said, coffee dyed, avocado dyed, all different types of things. But when I was putting them together, I was keeping in mind what's going to be visible from the outside. This one here is all colorful pages. This is all Easter egg dyed paper. Again, the video that we did last week, all different colors, all different things. You can go with junk journal style where you use all different types of paper, book pages and so on. In this one here, my first signature had this coloring book page and then I had random stuff in there. Second signature had this yellow page and again random stuff, and I had sewing in there. And then the third signature here is also coloring book page because I was keeping in mind what's going to be visible from the outside, right? So that's the kind of thing I was going for. And also I have these ruffles here at the edges because I wanted the book to be thicker on the edges here so that it's not kind of sitting flat like this because of the way my signatures are spaced out. This is not something that you know have to do, but I really love the look of the ruffles. So without the ruffles, the pages were kind of sitting flat, and you can see I have a lot of space here and a lot of space here because I wanted stuff to be visible, and then the book was kind of sitting like this, and that's why I went in with the ruffles. Okay, I'm going to prepare my signatures and I'll be right back. So at this stage, I don't want to mess around too much because my cover is not dry yet, but you can check here how your book is going to look. So you're checking your pages, see that's how it's going to look with the yellow and the coloring book page. Then this is how it looks with all coloring book pages, a little bit too busy. It's not too bad. Or all yellow pages, I don't like that. Or blue, for example, I don't like that either. I think I like this combination the best. So that's what I'm gonna go with. I have prepared my signatures. I'm not gonna dwell on this too much because you can prepare your signatures any way that you want. But I'm gonna show you what I've done. When it's bound, this is kind of how it's gonna look. So I'm happy with the outside. So you can see the alternating first page. Okay, that's that. And I'll show you what I did in each signature, but I'll only show you one because I repeated the same for the others. I repeated exactly the same for the others as I said. I've got 7 folded pages in each signature.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
These are the pages that I've chosen. I think this is Easter egg dyed, just craft paper, green tea dyed, Easter egg dyed, we did this last week, avocado dyed paper, and tea dyed or coffee, I can't remember. Okay, 7 folded pages in each signature, 5 signatures altogether. 7 folded pages in each signature times 5 because I have 5 signatures. In total, I have 35 pages that are folded in half. And then you times it by 4 if you want to calculate how many sides you have, how many pages. You know how in a book, the pages are numbered like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So each page gives you 4 sides. I have 35 pages, like leaves, okay? 35 leaves times 4 sides. Altogether, my signature is going to have 140 pages. This is all not important really for this video, but just in case. At this stage, what you want to do is make the pages fit inside the journal or not, but I'm going to. So I'm just going to grab one of the signatures. And remember when we did these panels, how I left margins? That's kind of how high I want my pages to be. So I'm going to align it down the bottom, aligning it down here, and I'm going to mark myself where I'm going to trim. So I'm going to trim here. And I only mark it on this one signature, and then I use this for all of the signatures to trim off the top. And on the side here, I like to put it against the spine like this, move it down so it's against the spine, and then I can see how much overhang I have. I like to give myself a little bit, you know, don't want to go all the way to the edge, so I marked kind of in line with that paper. And now I'm going to go and, you know, trim away, trim the sides, and then trim the top. And of course I'm going to keep all this because I can use this to make paper ruffle rolls. I'll link the video here and also in the description box so you can check that out. And also this one I'm keeping. I also did a video on what you can do with this, so I'll link that in the description box down below. Before I start cutting into my other signatures, I'm just going to double check. And I know this is annoying. We'll get to that when it's all dry. I really don't like to be messing around with this book this much while it's still not dry, but I'm filming, so here we go. Perfect, perfect, perfect fit. Excellent, exactly what I want. Now, I use this cut signature as my template to mark where I need to cut the others. You can simply lay it on top and then cut. Or you can just cut each individual signature on its own, which is what I like to do. So I'm just marking where I need to cut. And I like to do each signature individually, as I said, because I suppose because there's less chance of pages ripping and that kind of stuff. Look at this, absolute perfection. If you're not into the whole perfection thing, you can just stack them all and then just go crazy trimming. All right, I'm going to show you what I have in a moment, but let's just trim this off now. I like to turn it around the other way so that I can see, and I'm using my pinking shears. You can trim right down to the cover, totally up to you. I like to have a little bit of something, you know, a little bit of it sticking out. All right, there we go. That's much better and easier to maneuver. So these are my pages all trimmed down, and now I just want to show you what I mean before when I was talking about the edge here. So my pages are going to be bound something like this at the spine. Just look at the spine. That's how it's going to be bound, which means that over here, see that the spine is too wide. Look at this, very thin here. So I like to bulk it up. You can bulk it, you know, this is a journal we're making. You're going to be clipping things in and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be bulked up anyway, but I just really like how this looks. So I choose a couple of pages per signature, or here I was really overdid it on this one here. Here I was being a bit more mindful, you know. Anyway, so I am going to do that for the journal I'm making today. And basically I'll show you one. I'm using just ribbon and I'm ruffling it up. I'm going to do one on camera, and then I'm going to do, you know, finish the whole thing so that we're ready for the next step, which is binding. So if you look at this one here, I've only got 2 ruffles per signature, and that's what I'm going to do on my journal here. And I'm just going to go with this to keep it real quick and simple. Even though maybe a black ribbon would look, I might go with black. It's quite thin, so it's not going to stick out, but that's okay. I might do both. So I'm going to start off with black. I'll show you how to do it. So I'll take my page and I'll take my ribbon. I like to have the ribbon hanging to the side a little bit. I like to use some sort of a zigzag stitch. You can just do straight stitch, totally up to you. Start sewing, back stitch, and then ruffle and sew. Stop, ruffle again, sew, and so on. literally sew on, but don't forget to ruffle in between. Trim this side, and next page, which of course I'm going to do off camera, but here it is. And then when you put it back in the signature and put it back in your book, you can see at this point how much is sticking out. Not much. So now what I would do is for the following ones, I might have it sticking out a bit more, perhaps like this. Banjo now is literally the worst time for the game. The worst possible time. We can't do that now. Go to sleep. Yes. Sleep. And here we go. My signatures are ready for binding. I'm just going to show you what I did. Each signature has 2 ruffles, black and pink. I also added some interest by sewing these wiggly lines on one of the pages, and then on the other one of the other pages I did the zigzag stitch all around, and that's all I did. And I think it looks pretty nice, and it's added bulk here so my book doesn't kind of, you know, flop down. Okay, so we're finished with the signatures, and of course the next step is deciding how you want to do the binding. So the kind of opening or shape you've chosen is going to determine how you're going to bind your pages in, because obviously wherever there's an opening you can't do any binding, right? So as you look at your spine, you determine how you're going to bind, where you're going to poke the holes to bind your signatures in, basically. So I've got some ideas here, some examples. This one here has 3 signatures and this last one here has 4 signatures. You can do a combination of all of the signatures being bound in exactly the same way. As you can see in examples 2 and 3, all of the signatures are bound in the same way. So the holes in the 3 signatures are exactly the same, have the same placement, right? So you need one template if that's the case. Just side note here, this might seem a little bit confusing, but it's when we keep going, it's not. It's really quite simple. But just bear with me for a moment. So if you have a look at these 2 examples, this book here has 5 signatures, and you can see the 5 bindings. Each signature is bound in exactly the same spot, because you can see the binding thread, they're all exactly the same. This book here also has 5 signatures. However, each signature is bound in different spots. So you can see the binding here, and then you can see this one shorter, and then this one's shorter, and then this one's longer. Okay, so you absolutely can play around with the binding depending on where your opening is. I am going to demonstrate what I've just spoken about, and it will all make sense. So going back to my book here, I am now going to decide how I want to bind, and I'm going to mark the holes on my spine. So I'm going to do it from the inside, right? I'm looking at only my spine. I've got 5 signatures, and I know that I want 2 of my signatures, so one here and one here. 2 of my signatures are going to be hidden, and they're going to be bound in these spots here. 3 of my signatures are going to be visible through the window. So I know that I want to bind them within the window, okay? So basically what I'm going to do is this. All of these dots is how I'm going to poke the holes. And once my binding is done, this is how it's going to look. So I'm going to do a combination of 3-hole pamphlet stitch, which are these 2, and a combination of whatever this one here is called, where I have 4 holes in each signature. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's do that first. Now I need to, this is an idea that's in my head, I need to transfer it onto my spine here, and obviously I want to make sure that everything is kind of evenly spaced. So I'm just going to use a pencil, I'm going to draw some lines, I'm going to draw where I'm going to poke the holes, then I'll poke the holes, and then I'll erase everything. So here we go. So I don't know how well you can see, but I found the exact middle of this section here, and I drew a line, and then this here is going to be the middle hole. I'm going to poke some holes there. I'm going to draw some more lines. I need 3 signatures in here. Okay, so I drew some lines here as well. I've got 3 lines for 3 signatures that are going to be visible through my opening, and 2 over here. And now I'm just going to determine where I'm going to place holes. So I need 2 holes here and 2 holes here. So 2 holes I've marked where I'm going to poke holes. Next I'm going to poke the holes. Now with this signature here, it's completely different to these 3 here. So I can have my top hole maybe here. Maybe I can do, instead of having these holes all at the same space up the top, I can have this one here. You know, you can sort of have a little bit of fun with the placement, which in fact I think I'm going to do just to make it a little bit more fun. So I'm going to move some holes down. Okay, I'm going to poke the holes where I marked, and then I'll show you from the other side so you can actually see how it's going to look. And here we go, all of those markings are going to be erased now. And I didn't choose a very good scrapbook paper for you to be able to see very easily, but once it's bound you'll be able to see. The main thing is I have got the holes poked in my spine, and now I can go ahead and erase all of these markings. Okay, ready to go. Now that we've poked the holes through the spine, of course we have to poke holes through the signatures, and the signature holes and the spine holes have to correspond. So this is where a template will help. As I mentioned here before in example 2 and 3, all of the signatures and bindings are in the same, exactly same spot, so you can use one template. For books that have different bindings for each signature, you might need a template for each signature. What I mean by template is just this. I folded a piece of paper that is exactly the same height as my signature. And I mark myself where the top is so that I'm not binding wrong. Now, the way that I'm going to bind my book, and you can't see here, so I'm going to show you in this one here. I have 2 signatures that have the exact same markings, exact same spots for holes. And I have 3 that are different to these 2, but they are exactly the same. So I only need 2 templates. Now, how do I know where to poke the holes that are going to correspond to the spine holes, right? This is where the template comes in. Okay, so I'm going to take my template. I'm going to align it here, and you can see, I don't know if you can see, there's my one of the holes. There is the top hole. And right there is the bottom hole. So I'm simply marking my template against the holes. And now I know, I'm just going to put a line right through. Now I know that this is my template for signature number 1 and number 5, because they're exactly the same, number 1 and number 5. If I place this against the holes, you can see that the holes, I hope you can see, goodness, you can see that they're all in the same space. So this template is for signature number 1 and 5. So just to be on the safe side, I am going to mark my signatures, number 1 and number 5. Okay, now I'm going to repeat the exact same thing with the 3 middle signatures. I'm going to mark the holes here. This paper is sitting where I want the signature to sit. Same amount of space from top of the book and bottom of the book. And now I'm going to mark hole number 1. And here are the markings for my signatures 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to bind the book finally. I've got a couple of diagrams here, just in case if you get confused, you know, but one of the signatures has like 6 holes and the other one has 4, and what do I kind of do? I personally do a combination of things. In this journal that I am doing today, I'm about to do on camera now, I'm going to do a combination of things as well. So the first and the last signature, I'm going to use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch to bind the signature in. Because I only have 3 holes, so I'm using a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. And the way that that's done is you go in through the middle hole, back inside through the top hole, you skip the middle hole, you go out through the bottom hole and back in through the middle hole. And you tie a knot, and that's done. If you only have 2 holes at the top, 2 holes down the bottom. That's 4 holes. You can't do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. This is how I do it, and this is what I'll be doing in my journal today. You go in through this hole here, then down, and then in through that one, then you go up. I'm about to do this on screen anyway, so don't get, upset if it's a bit confusing. I'm not the best diagram drawer. Let's just do it. First thing, of course, I need to do is poke holes. I haven't done that. So I'm gonna go to my first signature. I'm gonna choose which one was my template. It was this one here, and pop it right there in the middle. Okay, and that's it, snug nicely in there. And now I'm going to poke the holes that I have marked right over here. 1, 2, 3. Do the holes align? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Okay, that's the first signature sorted. Now for my second signature, I have this template. Of course, I can see exactly where I need to poke the holes. Went right through the thread. That's fine. Okay, my third signature, I use this template. My fourth signature, same template. And my fifth signature, I use this template. I'm gonna do it off camera and I'll be right back. And here we go. The holes in my signatures are now corresponding to each other and to the spine. It's difficult to see, but they're all there. And we are ready to start binding. I am going to start with the first signature. Just want to make sure that's the top. Perfect. Make sure you keep your signatures in order that you want to bind them, and you're not kind of flipping them around, and because the holes are now perfectly corresponding and we don't want to mess around with that. So I'm starting with the first signature, which is the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. There's my little diagram for that. I am using just embroidery floss, nothing fancy, and I've decided to go with black, and I'm going to go in through the middle hole of the signature and of course also of the spine. Now we're going back in through the top hole, first of the spine, and then I'm gonna go in through my signature. Now we're skipping the middle hole, we're going down to the bottom hole. I'm gonna go through the signature first and then through the spine. Okay, now we're tightening everything, and now we're going back in through the middle hole. Oh, went through the signature as well. Perfect. Sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I have to go through the cover and then through the signature. Okay, and tie a knot and another knot, maybe another knot, maybe a bow, and trim. Perfect. Now that's signature 1 done. Now we're ready to bind signature number 2. And here's signature number 2. As you can see, we've got 2 holes here, 2 holes here. So I'm doing this type of binding. So for this one, I'm going to measure out my thread. First, I'm going to do about 2 and a bit heights of the book, because I always like to have extra. Thread my needle, and we're ready to go. So we're going to go in through. You can start at any hole. You can start up here, you can start down here, you can start here. It really doesn't matter, but we're going to choose a hole. So let's start from inside here, going through the signature, then we're going through the cover. Now we're going back in through the next hole, and of course through its corresponding hole on the signature. And here we are. You can, if you're working with thicker thread, you can tie a knot at the end, and then you don't have to be tying a knot here. But at the moment, I'm going to just tie a knot right over here, make sure it's nice and tight. And I'm going to obviously double knot. We want to be like fanatic about making sure things are not going to unravel, unglue, undo. We want none of that, none of that. All right, so we're doing a double knot. Perfect. Now that we're back here, we're gonna go in through the next hole, and I'm gonna go in through the spine at the same time. Here I am, ready or not. I don't know why I just did that. And of course going back in through its corresponding hole in the spine, which you can't see because this scrapbook paper is quite full on, and I can actually see from up here, so maybe I can do both at the same time. both. Oh, here we go. Look at that. I love it when that happens. Lovely. And now we're just going to tie a knot here. And I think I can move this diagram out of the way. We don't need it anymore. So now I'm just going to tie a knot right there and make sure that everything is nice and tight. We don't want any loose signatures. Really, really tighten and tie a knot. Anyway, you know how. Sometimes I do this way, sometimes I do that way. I just want a knot there, and then I want a double knot, and then I want a triple knot, and I just want to really just keep making sure. Okay, and there we go. We can chop that off. We can chop that off, and that's how it looks like on the inside, and then that's how it looks on the outside so far. And now I'm going to do the rest of the signatures. Signature 3 and 4, I'm doing the exact same way as I've just done with the 4 holes. And then the last signature, it's going to be a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, which is this one here. I'm going to do it off camera, otherwise it's going to take way too long. And here we go, my book is bound. I have some regrets. I wish that I went with 2 yellows on the side and then the coloring book page 1 signature on the inside. I also wish that I had them closer so that you can actually see this whole signature. I wish I had them closer in here. I am contemplating perhaps coming in because I have space, and this is the beauty of this kind of a thing. I can come in here and bind another signature, perhaps something quite thin. Maybe I could do an envelope. Okay, so I've decided to actually add these pages that I've sewn together and created like pockets. And I'm going to sew one in here and one in here. And it's going to look like this, and I'm going to enjoy that much more. So now all I have to do is poke 2 holes corresponding to the holes that I already have. I can kind of see where the holes are, so I'm just going to poke the holes right there in the middle and also down here. I'm going to do some markings first and poke away. I'm going to use my template here, and now I'm going to bind it in. All right, there's one done, already looking much better. And now I'm going to repeat the process for the second one. And here we go. Now I'm happy. I'm really happy with how this looks. Ended up having 7 signatures, but 2 of the signatures are just pockets. And it's quite good. I'm happy with this. No regrets. Okay, last thing I need to do is finish the cover. I have a whole bunch of these mason jars. I have a tutorial on this, I'll link it down below, ready to go, and they always look quite nice on covers. So I'm just testing to see, you know, what speaks to me. This is also a journal topper that I did a tutorial on. I'll have all sorts of different ones. I'll link that below as well. That doesn't look too bad. I have a few of those. So really anything that I put on, it's going to look quite nice. Maybe something like this. I think I'll go with this one. And here we go, my book is complete. It's always nice to have some journal toppers ready to go so that you can quickly decorate a book. I love how the rose in this image goes really nice with these ruffles on the sides and the black boot with the black, and you know, I am quite happy with how this turned out. It looks lovely, really, I think. All right, another thing I wanted to mention, I am going to put the instructions up on screen side by side so that you can take a screenshot. But last thing I wanted to mention is with the binding, you can do so many different combinations. I did the 3-hole pamphlet stitch and then this 4-hole one, I don't know what that's called. You can do something like this, where you have the 3-hole pamphlet stitch on the side, and then you have the crisscrosses here in the middle. You can, instead of sewing, you can wrap around the edges up the top, wrap around the edges down the bottom. These are just 2 examples, 2 ideas, and you can really just have a lot of fun with it. Look how cool this looks. It just makes me want to make more and more and more. And I'm hoping that you feel inspired and that you feel like you can do it. Of course you can. I'm sure a lot of the information you already know. But in any case, I hope that you feel inspired. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. You can tag me on Instagram with the things that you make. You can also join my Facebook group. Everything is linked in the description box below. And of course, I have to show you this side too. How scrumptious does this look? I just love this project. All right, I'm gonna pop the instructions on screen now. Here are the first 2 pages of the instructions. You can take a screenshot or you can pause the video and copy the instructions down. Everything is quite detailed and broken down into specific steps. So I hope I haven't missed anything. These are the other 2 pages of the instructions. By the way, what I might do is take photos of these instructions and put them in my Facebook group. So if you want to, you can head on to my Facebook group, you can join, or if you're already in there, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put the link to this video in the Facebook group, and in the comments I'm gonna have these instructions, so you don't have to, I don't know, copy them down. That's what we'll do. If you have any questions, please let me know, of course, in the comments down below. Otherwise, do let me know what you think, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.